stop talking about lesbians, 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 stop talking about lesbians.
Well, this is going to go well. So, hi, hello, welcome to Black and White Thinking. For those of you that don't know, my name is Mage, and I have queer opinions sometimes. I would like to think of myself as a bisexual writer who originally had the intention of creating this channel as some sort of safe outlet for my writing whilst I attempted to deal with being crazy. Most of that writing I assumed would revolve around fantasy fangirling and, Yennefer of Vengerberg. However, with the rise of online biphobia and literal radfem ideals in the last few years, I have found myself feeling it more necessary to advocate for my bisexuality in certain spaces, and I guess I want to figure out for myself, via my mediocre art, quite why everyone seems to hate us so much. This is going to be one of those videos, because, well, people have been talking about bi-lesbians online a lot recently. Like, this conversation is everywhere, and I guess I found some of the discourse to be a little messed up, and maybe a little historically inaccurate too. I identify as a bi woman and nothing else, because, personal shit. But I am still very much a bisexual woman who feels connected to her lesbian roots and history, like Angela Davis reading, Santana Lopez stanning, and Lister Church visiting lover of women. Those are all cliches. Not because I'm a straight girl with a fetish, but because lesbian life and culture is something that is a part of me as well. But I guess, where do we draw the line when it comes to labels? At the beginning of Pride, I wished bi-lesbians a powerful month via Instagram post. It's a stupid thing I did, and I was just trying to encourage a few different visions of bi people to, get through Pride. But people had a lot of questions. Why had I posted that? What the hell was a bi-lesbian, and did I support them? How can something so paradoxical exist in our so perfectly ordered society? Well, I can answer why I posted that right now. I wished bi-lesbians a good Pride because I tend to see more vitriol for bi-lesbians online than I actually see people identifying as bi-lesbians, which I guess causes me concern for reasons I will hopefully cover in this video. And I guess I'll attempt to unravel the rest too. This conversation is appearing a lot, making its way through queer social media, being something that has appeared in my ask box and messages, as well as being something we've discussed in my Discord, which you should join. I really do want to try to make sense of some of the different opinions on this pretty minuscule but deeply divisive label, and just present some basic bi history that I have come across that might help us figure this all out. So again, are queer people that label themselves as both bi and lesbians a danger to both bisexual women and lesbians? Are queer women once again facing another reckoning when it comes to the separation of bi culture and lesbian culture? Is this discourse about excessive microlabels or political lesbianism, or something else entirely? Okay, so what or who is a bi-lesbian? There seems to be a few pretty conflicting definitions of what a bi-lesbian is, and lots of people a bi-lesbian as someone who is using the split attraction model and may identify, for example, as biromantic but homosexual, or perhaps an M-spec lesbian who sees their bi-ness as including women and non-men but excluding men. A bi-lesbian who is using the term lesbian in a way that is more frequently recognised as resembling political lesbianism. Lesbianism meaning someone who essentially chooses to defy heteronormative boundaries by swearing themselves off men. A bi-lesbian as a bi-woman with a lean towards women, or a bi-woman who is not looking to date men? A bi-lesbian, a lesbian dating a non-binary or trans man partner who had once or still identifies with lesbianism. This can be a way these women stay true to their own orientation and also validate their partner's gender. A bi-lesbian as someone who considers themselves attached to both orientations for any reason they choose to give. There are dozens of alternating reasons people may or may not refer to themselves as a bi-lesbian at any given point in their life. It's not a new thing, and it is honestly a concept much older than a lot of newer labels people already seem comfortable with. I feel very different, personally, about the various different ways the phrase bi-lesbian is defined. To me, some make more sense than others. The label bi-lesbian does exist though, and it has existed for a while. Very differently since the 1970s, and has been used by some very important bi activists and in many important bisexual works. A lot of modern queer activism, at least in terms of visual optics, seems to be quite disconnected from its beginnings in this regard, and the misunderstanding of the bi-lesbian identity is one of the reasons this is kind of apparent to me. I don't mean to sound like a lazy, patronising millennial, but marriage equality and pronouns in Insta bios doesn't feel like progress or revolution to me if no one can remember why these things were originally important, if we don't understand what got us to this point in the first place. Bi women have historically claimed the label bi-lesbian as a way to counteract lesbian separatism and biphobia, not to encourage it. Bisexual activist Lani Ka'ahumanu refers to herself commonly as a bi-lesbian. For example, here's a piece from 1985 where she clearly states, "Regardless of how I want to label or not label my behaviour, it must be discussed when I am getting to know someone. I feel a sense of responsibility about being honest with who I am and what my sexual behaviour is, whether or not I call myself a bisexual, a lesbian identified bisexual, or even a lesbian who sleeps with men on occasion. It is the behaviour that is important to me. Whatever same cross-sexuality combination there might be, labels and behaviour are not mutually exclusive. When some people are made invisible and others more socially, politically correct, it forms new or maintains the old hierarchies. There is no politically, socially correct sexual preference. There is sexual behaviour that is on a spectrum of many possibilities." Like, I can't pretend I'm offended by this quote. Alison Bechdel has a bi-lesbian character in Essential Dykes to watch out for. She uses that character to frame her own ignorance about labels. The Bi Women's Quarterly, edited by Robin Ox, has published plenty of women who discuss how the bi-lesbian identity came about in the face of resisting political lesbianism, in the face of horrific biphobia coming from the lesbian community back in the day. As did the Lavender Menace journals. There is poetry from bi women. Again, if you read Bisexual Politics, Theories, Queries and Visions, which I would highly recommend and you can find on the Internet Archive, you will find multiple women in one book across separate essays calling themselves bi-lesbians. No matter how many times someone tweets that bi-lesbians don't exist, it does not and cannot erase the facts of bi-human history. And there are just endless accounts through bi history that, yes, I guess is hard to find sometimes, but does exist if you look for it, of bi women using bi-lesbian as a way to counteract crap they were facing. Not because they wanted to make things harder for lesbians, or because they were ashamed of being bi. Literally the opposite on both fronts. I'm going to, and hopefully will have put some of these examples on screen, and I will link as many of them as I can find below. These are queer historic references that people are choosing to purposely ignore. Ka'ahumanu, Bechdel, Ox, these are all people that have put years of work into queer history, and even if you don't like them, they deserve a read. Okay, so a little bit more on the why. And take this as my interpretation and summary. This is my video. However, if you do feel like the bi-lesbian label is dangerous or bad or non-existent for reasons that I don't cover, please let us know below. I'm being genuine here. I want to know. But yeah, anyway. There seems to be two subsets of queer women that are the most vocal about their disdain for bi-lesbians, in my opinion. These people are usually found on social medias like Twitter and Tumblr. The first group, and definitely the loudest of the two, seeming to be pretty, how can I say this, radical lesbians, and the, let's say, mildly self-flagellating bisexual women that tend to look up to them. I was one of those pick-me bi girls for a long time when I was a teenager involved in fandom, so I know they exist. These lesbians are not exactly common, but they are very loud, and they are usually deflecting their man-related trauma towards women that they consider not as gay as them. They're the type of women to unironically tweet that bisexual women choose violence when they date men. They're dangerous. The second group of people are self-proclaimed battle-axe bis, and no, not that one. I wish it was just that one. These people tend to be hurting a lot because of lesbian separatism and the biphobia present in, well, all of queer history. They are bored of being called transphobes, and they tend to take this out on other bi women too. These two groups of people exist, and they usually can't agree on anything, but both seem to have found a common cause to fight for, albeit perhaps with different intentions. Both groups think they are doing something good with this projected disdain. One group thinking they are protecting lesbians, the other thinking they are protecting bi women, both being particularly brutal towards anyone who dares to overlap the two. So again, why? Well, it's complicated. There are so many different definitions and descriptions for the bi-lesbian micro-label that it can kind of be hard to pin down any specifics, but the vibe online seems to be mostly this. The bi-lesbian identity is dangerous because bi-lesbians do not exist, and identifying as one blurs the definition of bisexual and lesbian, and this is bad for queer women. Why is this bad for queer women? Well, men, it seems, which I guess is part of my issue with this particular excuse, and a red flag, perhaps? Bi-lesbians seem to be an issue because who could men possibly know who to hit on if bi women are out there calling themselves lesbians? It seems in a lot of this discourse, it is assumed bi women should be okay with being hit on and harassed by strange men, as they have chosen that life in their attraction to them. When a man hits on a lesbian, it's seen as a sinful crime against nature because clearly she will never have any interest in him. As if centering men is the only way we know how to describe ourselves anymore. Okay, sorry for the snark. I'm not saying there will never be issues with labels that intersect like this. Personally, and I'm sure people aren't going to like this, I'm not a huge fan of M-spec anything where the word bi will simply suffice. I really am not a fan of people that say they are M-spec lesbian and use it to indicate that they like everyone but cis-het men. This is the type of definition of sexuality I come across a lot of pansexuals also using online, and it's one that I do find to be very much rooted in biphobia. This is where I think the distinction needs to lie. When Lani Ka'amanhu calls herself a bi-lesbian to indicate her connection with her bisexual orientation and the outstanding political work she had done for queer women's causes, that to me is just something she has earned at this point. She has done more for queer women than any of us likely ever will. Her reasoning is rooted in bi pride. It is rooted in reclaiming the right she has to connect her woman-loving ass to woman-loving history. If someone is calling themselves a bi-lesbian in the same way certain people can identify with mogai labels, to go out of their way to not be like other bis, to avoid acknowledging their bisexuality because they're ashamed of it, I can see more of an issue. I mean, I don't think those people are villains, but I can see the issue. But again, we have to explore the root of why we call ourselves the things we do. We have to be better understanding the effects of biphobia on bi people. This all feels very hot take of me, and I don't want to serve as moral judicator, but there has to be an acknowledgement at some level, right, from anyone talking about this, that bi women do have a right to identify with whatever aspects of lesbianism they want to. Anything else is just radical feminism, like literally, by definition. And it's a lie to pretend that radical feminism is actually woman-identified. To define lesbianism as non-men who exclusively like non-men is to rewrite the definition of lesbian to specifically exclude bi women. That's ahistorical and cruel, really. And then it's the bi-lesbians who want to acknowledge both parts of themselves, who I'm supposed to see as biphobic. Does anyone know how ridiculous it would be to call Lani Ka'ahumanu a biphobe? It would be like calling Ted Bundy a feminist. It's bullshit. Bisexuality and the fight for LGBT rights has been her entire life. She is an incredibly important bi and lesbian advocate, a beautiful poet, and she is still alive right now. We have, at the end of the day, messed up the definition of lesbian a bit. And by we, I mean lesbian separatists, political lesbians, and radical feminists, who in excluding bi women from their own culture, people, and history, have just left us with a lot of mess. A mess that very much revolves around how queer women define themselves in the modern era. The stain of radical feminism is literally everywhere in modern queer conversation. From Joanne Rowling being a TERF because she read The Handmaid's Tale once, to people like Kalani and Hayley Kiyoko being basically celebrated for their biphobia, to the incredible lack of respect or just general understanding so many younger queer people seem to have for sex workers or non-binary folk or kinksters. Political lesbianism happened, it is happening, and we have to deal with the consequences. These are the literal consequences. There is no reason lesbian should not exist as an umbrella term to include all queer women if they choose. If modern Twitter lesbians want a word that means non-man who exclusively likes non-men, then they are welcome to make one. But it's up to bi women how much of lesbianism they choose to identify with. The disregard of bi-lesbians, or really any connection bi women have with the label lesbian, seems like a really quick way for rad femmes and political lesbians to sever the connection and sufficiently erase the involvement of bisexual women in lesbian history and culture. Like, if I'm with a bi-female partner and everyone wants to refer to us as lesbians, it's fine then. If I'm dating a man, I have straight passing privilege, but if I chose to identify as a bi-lesbian, I would be a heretic who cares little about the rights of queer women and is actively putting them in danger. None of this makes any sense to me, I'm not gonna lie. Like, for me, and I'm going to be a dick here, the real danger to queer women is the fact that 80% of non-monosexual women will face IPV in their lifetime. What if we talked about how biphobia is rooted in colonialism, in transphobia, in racism? Sometimes it just feels like we're kind of getting to the point of no return, and that sucks. Can we really damage a union between queer women if that union doesn't even exist anymore? Sometimes I guess it feels like none of us have our priorities, pun intended, straight. I still have so much to discover, but the more I learn about bisexual history, the more I read about bisexual activists from the 70s, 80s and 90s, and I realise not a whole lot has changed for bi people. I can't help but feel like a lot of people's issue with the bi-lesbian identity is maybe just the bi part, the marrying of bisexual with the lesbianism. A lesbianism that is considered pure and untouchable and would be damaged in association with bi womanhood. It's hardly news that people have an issue with bi women relating to lesbianism. You should see my Tumblr inbox, I'll put some on the screen. It's a lot of why are you even here, straighty? Bi women are pretty often, and I know no one likes me saying it even though it's a proven fact at this point, excluded by lesbians in queer spaces. Sometimes I just feel less queer around lesbians than I do around straight women a lot of the time. And I'm heartbroken that that's my truth. Straight people, of course, have serious political power over any of us, but they are usually nicer about my queerness in conversation than a lot of lesbians I've interacted with, who will pick and poke and pry until I've proven myself to them, who don't even think I'm allowed an opinion on lesbian culture, even though, I am lesbian culture. Radfems, political lesbians, especially these days and especially online and in fandoms, will always go really hard to convince you that lesbians are pastel soft miracles and that love between two women who only love women is the purest form of lesbianism. This is all just weirdly veiled misogyny, biphobia and transphobia used to exclude lesbians who aren't perfect, aka bi women or trans women, and this is exactly why bi women in lesbian spaces are gonna start calling themselves stuff like bi-lesbians. Of course they will, when lesbian has become something lauded over other women who apparently just haven't realised they don't have to date men yet. Like, God, we have got to stop using the wrong definition of compare to control the narrative in queer women plus spaces. If you don't want people defining themselves as bi-lesbians, how else is a bi woman supposed to access her lesbian culture if you make the lesbian label mandatory for access? It's almost like you just don't want bi women involved in these things. The added lesbian after bi wouldn't be necessary if lesbian separatism wasn't a thing. Bisexuality and lesbianism cannot be separated by lesbians or bisexuals. They just are similar and interconnecting, woven together across a great generational tapestry of dykehood. And I'm pretty sure most of this is biphobia, that most of the hatred towards the bi-lesbian identity is that people don't want bi women to interact with their history. No one seems to have this vile energy for any other, assumably jarring label. No one actually cared about bi-erasure. He/him lesbians is an identity that quite often requires extra explanation, but it's still one we should demand to be accepted. I know plenty of he/him lesbians in real life, just like how, in my real life, I have literally been referred to as a bisexual lesbian by random fucking people I don't even know. Pansexual is being accepted as a full label and no longer a micro-label, even when plenty of self-proclaimed pansexuals online are using the label wrong and describing their own orientation through a biphobic or transphobic lens. All of these things require extra understanding, but bi-lesbians, that's where we're choosing to draw the line? I don't think there's a line, guys. That's kind of inherently what queerness is, what bisexuality is about. Bisexuals can't be lesbians because you can't be two things at once? Like, no, bisexuality is the definition of more than one thing, and I can be as many things as I wish. It's one of the reasons I personally love being bisexual, and I guess I think more people should be proud of that fact. Okay, so call me a cynic or a conspiracy theorist, call me Scully or Mulder, but as I've said, I really can't help but feel like the vitriol behind the hatred for bi-lesbians is the bisexuality part, and the fact that people just don't like us. Lesbians especially, vocally and historically, don't like bisexuality. This is not lesbophobia or bi-biased. Biased. It's just fact at this point, and it is on vocal so-called lesbian activists to be more accepting of the lesbian umbrella and queer women that do not fit certain ideals if we want things to change. This was not a problem created by bisexuals, it was an attempt at a solution. We may not like that solution, but that's still the truth.
I make no apologies for how I chose to repair what you broke. You don't get to call me a whore.
We cannot have a conversation about any of these labels without acknowledging why and how such labels came to exist in the first place. Everyone just wants to use the concept of validity to shut down nuance in queer conversations. Gatekeeping is the issue here. In this case, the gatekeeping of lesbianism. A gatekeeping that I have felt firsthand and honestly believe to be at its highest level since I first came out 14 years ago. Just JR, a bi YouTuber you should check out and I will link below, recently mentioned the rise of pandemic biphobia in one of his videos. And wow, yeah, that's definitely a thing. And ultimately, whether or not the bi-lesbian label annoys you, it still exists as an important piece of bi-resistance in our history. When biphobia is on the rise, when lesbian separatism and radical feminism is making such a comeback, can we ultimately be surprised that a label specifically created to counteract that is making a comeback too? Okay, so this video was fucking hard to make, and I've been thinking about it for months. This whole issue has kind of been weighing on my chest, and I just wanted to get it out there. If you want to talk more about this, please come find me, chat, Discord, wherever. If you liked this video, let me know. Please subscribe. I'm desperate. And yeah, be nice to your local bisexual, please. Bye.